Awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
Cool. I'm gonna double check that, but yeah. Yep, okay, we're good. So yeah, we're waiting a few minutes for anyone that's just gotten here to make sure people have time. So we're just hanging out for a moment. How is everyone doing today? Good enough?
Doing dandy. Just kidding. We got a grill this weekend, and we started using the grill, but it's been raining for the past 2 days, or rather just the last day. So it was a sad day yesterday because it was my roommate's birthday, and he's like, "Yes, let's grill." And then we looked outside, and we're like, "We can't grill." I was like, "Okay, well, there goes that." But other than that, honestly, can't complain. You know, with COVID. But
I hope it stops raining and you can grill again.
I think it's supposed to be clear skies today, so. What about you guys?
Starting slow, but going there. Have an appointment with the dog dentist after this, so yeah.
Ooh.
Exciting dog time.
The dog dentist.
Yeah, well, it's just a cleanup of the teeth. So, but I'm just going to call it dentist because I don't really know.
How about you, Eric?
Yeah, it's been a pretty long day already. So woke up early and it's now 8 p.m. So, but it's been an interesting day.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here then at 8 p.m.
Yeah, 8 p.m. sounds late. 8 p.m. Wednesday night, right?
Well, it's dark now. It's sun is over. Yeah.
Sun's over.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm super
Eric's like,
happy
I
to
woke
have
up.
you.
And
That's
Eric's like,
tomorrow, I mean.
Eric's like, I woke up before the sun got here, staring at my terminal, and I went to bed staring at my terminal after the sun left.
That's the life.
I know, but it's the life.
Awesome.
Cool.
I think I'm ready to get started soon if everyone else is. We're almost at 5 minutes. I know tradition is 6, but for some reason I don't like 6.
Is tradition 6?
Yeah.
We can make it 5.
Can make it 5. Okay, awesome. Well, welcome to anyone watching who's joined out here. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this today. We're going to be talking about jupyterlab extensions, which is awesome because, right, what is jupyterlab for? A lot of people argue about that. Shouldn't open that can of worms. But one of the big things, right, it's modular, and so people are building all these amazing extensions. Not everyone is talking about it, so that's what we're going to try and talk about here today. A little bit about how that actually works. And I've got some awesome people here with me to help guide us through that, since I'm Isabella and I'm a UX UI designer. So I know about it from a very different end than everyone else with me. But since I've mentioned my guests, I'd like to introduce them. And we're going to start with Ani. Introduce yourself, please.
I got it. Hi guys, I'm Ani. Isabella gave me a wonderful introduction and flattered me, but I'm really not all that much different, other than I used to be a Jupyter user, and now I write things for Jupyter in my free time and do other things. But at Quantsite, I do software engineering, so I guess that's where my shtick comes into play. But at Quantsite, we do more computational things, so that's also included in a lot of our skill sets, and as such, we run into people who use Jupyter in science all the time. So that's kind of why I'm here and what I'm excited to talk about to you guys today.
Do you work on any other open source projects? Sorry, checking my list.
No, not at the moment. I don't think so. Maybe. Well, I'm working on another one, but we're getting there. We're getting there. It's a slow but sure process, as a lot of open source developers may know. Getting into a community kind of takes time. But once you're in, you're in.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
How about you, Eric?
Yeah, I am Eric, talking from Belgium. It's 8 p.m. here, and no more sun at all. But yeah, there is plenty of light here on my screen. I mean, I see your face. That's so beautiful. And yeah, I am the founder of Data Layer. This is my company, but I mainly partner with Quirkshop on different open source projects. And I am committer for jupyterlab. I also am committer for Jupyter Server and working also as committer on Jupyter RTC, which is a real-time collaboration activity within Jupyter. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm super excited to hear what you have to say. And finally, Gonzalo, why don't you introduce yourself?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Isabella. Thanks, Sunny and Eric. Yeah, my name is Gonzalo. I'm currently located at Bogota, Colombia. Here is 1 p.m. and sun still isn't over, so that's good. I'm a civil engineer by trade, but I started working with software engineering for the past 5-6 years. And I'm currently working at Quirkshop as a software engineer, where I'm working with different projects. And in open source, I have worked with the Spider project. I got my commits right for jupyterlab last week, so yay. And I work on some other projects, Lector, which is a static website generator, and I contributed a bit on Beware project, which is a super cool library to provide a toolkit to write applications that work cross-platform, including mobile devices. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, excited to share my very small knowledge on all these topics on extensions.
Wow, and congrats on those jupyterlab rights. That's awesome. Yay!
Yeah, congratulations.
But I think that's an important perspective too, right? I know that you've written some extensions recently and you kind of have that newer knowledge, which will be great to hear about as well. Before we get in the main, oh, go on.
No, I think you deserve that, Gonzalo. Very, very impressive work so far on jupyterlab. I mean,
thanks.
Yeah, I mean, awesome.
Before we get into the main discussions, since we're talking a little bit about what extensions people have done, why don't you tell me about extensions you've been working on recently? Specifically, can you tell me about their goals and dependencies, right? Those are two things I know we're going to be talking about today. So, yeah. Why don't you start, Eric, since, yeah.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that last quirkshop. I'm working on an extension to connect jupyterlab with Twitter. I think that the goal is there to allow people to be more open. Data scientists and data analysts like to be focused on their work and share something with colleagues, but not to the world. And at some point, I think they can just expose what they do. And the extension I'm working on is taking a screenshot of a notebook or of the output of a cell and pushing that to as an image to the Twitter feed. And the technology I'm using there is React, and we're going to see how we can develop React extensions. And I'm also using the Twitter API. So I don't know a lot of extensions which connects like that to the external API.
That sounds great. I'm excited to hear more about it. Go ahead, Gonzalo. Yeah, we'll just go backwards.
Awesome. So yeah, like last time, I think I mentioned that I was starting to work on a Jupyter extension to provide some tooling for accessibility, not in terms of providing accessibility features, but actually evaluating the current accessibility features of jupyterlab. So this is actually a project I'm working with Isabella. So thanks, Isabella, for the help there. So yeah, I want to provide an easy way to be able to check the different contrast guidelines for colors, also provide some sort of visualization of how things could look under different chromatic phenomena that people experience sometimes in their eyes. So to get a better idea of how the overall theme of jupyterlab for a given set of extensions and components, how do they look under different circumstances, and how that information we can take it to actually improve things. On top of that, I would also like to build something to allow for an easy way to create themes directly from within jupyterlab and provide colors from the get-go that actually make sense from accessibility guidelines. So I still don't have anything to show at this point, but that's the work I'm doing, and I'm really excited to share that with you in another episode.
I'm also super excited for that. That will be so useful for so many different people. I'm looking forward to it. Ani, what about you? You mentioned extension work before. Is this different extension work? What you've been doing in jupyterlab?
I've also been alongside Eric writing a React extension for something that we're preparing to hopefully include with one of our open source projects in the near future. But this one is a little bit different because, 8 to 12 months ago, React was in a kind of a different state, I think, where they were adapting a new style of component classes. They were called functional components. And that introduced kind of a new way that I approached writing extensions from within jupyterlab, and specifically like React extensions from within jupyterlab, because there are a lot of gotchas, even for like a seasoned React developer, because when you expect some things to work in React, it makes some base assumptions about things like the DOM or having access to complete signaling. And this is always not the case, as Eric will probably show us in jupyterlab. But yeah, that's mostly what I've been working on. So hopefully people will see it soon.
Cool. I can't wait to see it unveiled. That's very exciting. Secrecy. Yep. Nice and spooky. Awesome. Perfect in time for Halloween, huh?
Yeah, I know, right in time for spooky month.
Yeah. So awesome. Now that we've gotten to know each other and what you're working on a little bit, I mentioned earlier, right, we're going to be talking a little bit how, like the extensions, what's the foundation for that in jupyterlab, right? What's happening? What happens if you want to start working with an extension? And today we're going to be focusing on React components. A couple people have mentioned them already. It's a big part of jupyterlab. Could someone please tell us a little bit about what React is, though? I didn't know about a year and a half ago, so.
Gonzalo, Eric, should I take it? Unless you guys want to.
Yeah, I guess, sure. No, just go for it. Maybe
okay,
just mention the other players around so that people know that.
Yeah, so React is the most popular, I think, at this point. I'm not sure. Numbers-wise, I haven't checked. JavaScript framework. And what React is it's basically a bunch of JavaScript code or TypeScript code written by JavaScript developers, basically compiled into a library. So it makes it really easy to ship and develop JavaScript applications. Similar libraries of comparison are Angular and Vue. And they all have kind of different ideas on how people should engineer software within JavaScript. That being said, each one is backed by a different kind of philosophy and company. Angular, Google had a lot of oomph and skin kind of developing Angular. React is a Facebook-driven project. Vue is started by an ex-Googler, but it is completely community-driven and open source. Basically, you can use any of these kind of frameworks to just kind of get started, so you don't have to make things from scratch, but you can instead prototype with things that are already pre-made for you very quickly and very easily, so you can focus on really developing your application.
Awesome. That was a great example. Oh, go on, Eric.
I think React is a friendly open source license nowadays. So it was not the case before. Now it's no more an issue. You can use React in any open source project. And there is something very strong with React, which maybe is also another framework, but it's a virtual DOM. So it is very performant because React maintains in parallel to the effective browser DOM, a virtual DOM, and will not render anything if the content does not change at all. So performance is very, very important with React, and you have a lot of third-party libraries, a lot of developer develop components with React, which are very, very easily reusable. That's, I would say, a characteristic of React.
Awesome. How does that then affect, sorry, dog, I live with a dog. How does that work with JupyterLab then, right? Like, how does that actually impact it? You were listing a little bit of strengths and weaknesses. What does that influence?
Well, maybe I'm going to quickly say that JupyterLab Foundation is another widget toolkit similar to React, similar to Angular, similar to Vue, and that toolkit is called Lumino. It is a very tailored toolkit built from the ground to serve JupyterLab needs, and it has also other classes to do like more algorithm and data processing and so on. But the foundation of JupyterLab is Lumino, so it is not React. Still, if you look at the internals of JupyterLab, you will see a lot of React, maybe a bit less than Lumino, but still it's not like, it's not minor. You have a lot of code developed in React. And how this is achieved? Well, this is like Lumino provides what is called a React widget, which allows to expose React components as Lumino widgets. So the React widget is the one which wraps React and exposes it as Lumino. And at the end, you have a complete Lumino UI, which is the UI you see when you launch JupyterLab.
So it's mixing with other things, but it's still pretty critical in the development of the UI, like a user would see, right?
Yeah, and at the end, you don't see as a user, you don't see, oh, it is a widget provided by React, or it is a widget provided by Lumino. You do not see that. As a developer, you see that, especially about the states management and the properties. You have to like adapt React to Lumino. But the reverse is not available, so you cannot wrap a Lumino widget into a React component today.
Oh.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I guess I would like to add just a little bit more on what Lumino does and why it was created. So thanks, Eric, for the explanation. So on top of having like some routines and algorithms to manage, basically Lumino is there to create like the base desktop-like interface so that we can have all these tabs and menus on the top, status bar, left side areas, right side areas, different areas through the interface. So all that is handled by Lumino, which is like the framework that gives like the skeleton for the user interface. And on top of that skeleton, we do what Eric just mentioned, that there is a wrapping of different things, that some of the components in JupyterLab are already using React. There were some licensing issues in the past that prevented a more extensive use of React. And nowadays, that's no longer a limitation. But in theory, we should be able, as developers, to create different components in different frameworks, be it Vue or React, and have them work in JupyterLab. Now, cross-communication between those things, I'm not so sure how that would work or if it's even possible, but it's definitely doable to have this on top of Lumino, since Lumino is agnostic to whatever components and objects and things you put on top of it.
Yeah, as additional service Lumino provides, indeed, it's not only the widget, the algorithms, the settings. For example, when you configure in your JupyterLab, I want Markdown to behave that way, this is stored with a setting service. And there is also a database, for example, to store settings. And the workspace also, you can define, I want to open my JupyterLab that way, with that notebook open, with that size of the file manager. This is the workspace management, which is provided by Lumino also.
Okay. That's so making sure I'm understanding. You're saying Lumino, in like you said, it, I think Gonzalo was like a skeleton, right? So it does that foundational stuff, but we're using React on top of that to kind of add functionalities of different types, right?
We can use React, not always. We can use both Lumino widgets and React on top of that skeleton.
Okay, awesome.
So to make it clear, React, the extension system is being done so that React developers can come in and write React extensions.
Oh.
And that's just because Lumino's internals are not as easily or as widespread as React is, or React, React's kind of user bases. So the idea is that this huge user base of people that know React already exist, and they should be able to just come and augment everything inside JupyterLab without having to worry too much about Lumino. So Lumino will take care of a lot of the work for you under the hood. Is that correct, Eric? Is that an accurate descriptor, do you think?
Yeah, sure. If you want to access the core JupyterLab service,
You'll have to use Lumino.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
Awesome. That was a really good explanation. Thank you. So why don't you show us what that looks like, right? You have a demo for us, Eric. I'm very excited to see it. Awesome. There's the screen share.
Yeah. So, okay.
So what are you showing us? I know I just said demo, but what are we looking at?
All right. So I have prepared for today a small repository. I guess we can share the link after. We're gonna push that on a Quantslide repository. What I'm gonna show you, well, sorry.
Someone else can explain it too while you're setting it up. Like, what are we going to learn today?
Okay.
It is actually Eric's demo, so I too am one.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
It was
So,
worth a shot.
I think I'm going to take like 15 to 20 minutes. That's fine. If it's too long, just stop me. So I've been taken by surprise. So my service is not running. So indeed, what I'm going to show you is an extension. And that extension, what it does something very, very simple. It opens a Lumino widget in a tab because I want to show you the difference between a React and a Lumino implementation, but it does roughly the same. And I'm going to show you open a React widget after. So now I open that Lumino widget, which is a very simple panel where you can click on a button and it's going to increment that value by a random number. I'm going to show you the code after, but if I click increment, okay, I think it's a random number between 0 and 10,000. So you earn that number, and after it will increment, 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 and so on. So what I'm going to show you is how this is implemented with Lumino, and after the kind of same functionality. But here you see, well, maybe the CSS is a bit different, but if you do increment, the number is gonna increment, but with a special motion. And this was very, very easy for me to do. So the more you win, the longer it takes. And this one is the same button. It will also increment the value, but that button is from a well-known React toolkit, which is called Material UI. So you see the look and feel here is different.
And for anyone who may not know listening, Material UI is the React implementation of Google's Material design system, which is an open design system that they publish. Yeah. sorry, go on.
No, very interesting indeed. So it's not the only, I think, well-known widget toolkit in React, but it's one from that I use a lot. So yeah.
And JupyterLab uses too. Yeah.
Yeah. So you see, those panels look the same, roughly the same. This one is a bit more, maybe has a bit more feature. Now I'm going to jump to the code. And maybe before showing the code, I'm just going to go through the steps, which are very, very easy to have that working. And probably you just have to copy paste those commands from the repository. That first command will create a Conda environment with the needed, it will be quirkshop Conda environment with Python, Node.js, Yarn, and a cookie cutter. Then what I have done, just cloning that JupyterLab repository. I'm using branch 2.2.8 because, well, maybe we will review that later on, but with version 3, you can run your extension without building it. For now, when you develop an extension, you have to build JupyterLab again. So this is why I had to pick Node.js to build the extension. And how you install JupyterLab to build and develop an extension is those two lines here, pip install and JupyterLab build. Then I have used the cookie cutter here just to create a naked extension. And then I have linked that extension here. So you have to, these are the result of those commands. So the first one is a clone of JupyterLab. And the second one is a cookie cutter, which has created a naked extension. What you see here is the development I have done, of course. But at the very beginning, it's just an index, which is available. And how you build those, actually, how you get the result, when you have linked that extension, you just do yarn watch here in the first terminal, which is a terminal I run in that folder. So the folder with the extension, I watch any change, and then I'm going to change, so like you can see the change. And I run JupyterLab in the second terminal here. And every time I change something, this one is going to change also, and the browser will change.
Okay, and so what you're showing us right now is a process to make a quick extension, right? Everything you have to set up to get in the space where you can work on that?
Yeah. I mean, these are 3 or 4, let's say 4 steps. Create the environment, clone JupyterLab, launch cookie cutter, build the extension, and build JupyterLab.
Awesome.
And you are ready to go. I mean, this is naked, but you are ready to go. And so this one will be created with a console log. This is a naked one, very basic implementation. And what you can see here is the Jupyter frontend, which is the main application. It's like the skeleton Gonzalo mentioned. And what you can do also is request additional extensions like the palette or the menu, and you can play around with that. And I'm going to show you what I have done. So the very first action is console log, and maybe I'm going to say quirkshop here. So what you will see, because the file is watched, this one builds. And this one should build. So I haven't seen any build here. Okay, so I'm not sure if it builds, but what you will get, the result of that command will be shown here.
Oh, so there you go. There it is. But
Yeah,
no, because it doesn't say quirkshop. This is the
no, it
last
does
one you
not
ran.
say. No,
Yeah.
no. So maybe I can stop that again. Yeah, there is a watch. This is how I launched that jupyterlab watch.
So when you get when it's not doing what you expect, how do you handle that? Like, what are you doing now?
Yeah, I stop and I start again. At the second time, well, I need to think more.
Yeah, usually I have to rebuild, which is kind of frustrating. Watch mode doesn't actually work all too well for me in general.
Yeah, indeed.
So,
It's very, well, it's a bit annoying. Sometimes it's going to compile, but the change will not be reflected in the browser.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but here, the strange thing is that it did not build at all. So maybe I can try again. No. So, no. So this one is built, but this one does not build. Okay, I think we need to move on anyway. Trust me, this was working before, and every change you do in the extension should be reflected in the jupyterlab.
Yeah, I mean, it will be, yeah, it will, as long as it compiles with the JLPM, which is using Yarn under the hood, and then you reinstall the extension at this point, it will work and reflect the changes. It's just that the build plus install actually takes a solid, like, minute.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I have done after is creating a menu, so the quirkshop menu here, and giving him a name. So this is all Lumino stuff. We don't see any React so far, and this is the foundation. So the menu, the layouts, and so on. And this one is shown here.
Okay.
Okay, so this command just, I add a menu, and I add a Lumino command, and I add after another menu for the React. But now I want to show you that Lumino quirkshop class, which I instantiate here. When I click on the command, I create a widget, and I say to the shell, add this widget to the main panel. And let's move on to that Lumino quirkshop box panel. So I extend box panel.
And that's still Lumino, yeah.
Okay. And I say you add a class. So yeah, maybe as introduction to Luminos, this is what I would say very imperative. You code, you don't write any HTML, you don't declare anything. You just code, and you create a button, and all you create that button, you have to go to the document and do create element with a div, and so on. So when you do button, you do create element button, and you add that button to the content. You see append child. So all the Lumino API is much imperative. You have to really write down some line of code. If you want to add a class, you do this way, you add a class. If you want to give an ID, you just do this ID, and so on.
And I also just wanted to add, in addition to all of this, I totally forgot, or have been just misspeaking this entire time. We are using TypeScript.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah,
As
sure.
JavaScript. Sorry, big distinction.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for calling that out.
We have types, right. Yeah, Eric, if you actually want to talk about TypeScript really quick, sorry to intrude.
No, that's fine. I mean, well, TypeScript is JavaScript with some types, for sure. I mean, this is, I've chosen the extension cookie cutter TS, but there is also, I never use it, but, oh no, I thought there was a JavaScript one, but
yeah,
not. But you could develop an extension in JavaScript, but yeah.
Yep. And this was the Lumino extension that you were going through, right?
Yeah, this is correct. So just to give you an idea of how how it looks like. It's a lot of code and line of code. So now I'm going to go to the React one. And to do React, you need to have a first widget which extends React widget. And here I give animate. I can give some properties, and those properties can be reused here in what looks more like a React class. So it is still the old way of developing React with a class.
Hey, Eric, so now maybe it's a good time, like in this example, the React QS, we have the TSX extension. So maybe just a quick comment on that would be nice.
Yeah, you need the X. If I remove the X, I'm pretty sure my Visual Studio Code is going to complain a lot here. And this is going to throw some error.
So why is it complaining?
So the X means that when you play, and maybe I'm going to move back to here, that widget, actually, I would love to be optional, but it is not, because you have to extend the React widget, and then you have to render a React component. And that component, typically what we do as a React developer, we separate that component in its own class. And that class, this looks more like what React developer know. It's more like a functional class here. So it's a function, and I receive parameter, I return a JS6 element, and because I return an X, it needs to be an X over there. Okay. So I will add again X. Now it's going to be happy.
Yay.
So JSX is this super specific syntax sugar that basically commingles HTML inside JavaScript. So you can write basically this weird hybrid mixture of both, and it's used specifically by React. React is known for JSX, and so when TypeScript was implemented in React, it became known for TSX, or the same thing, but with TypeScript.
Yeah, so something also to add to put this in perspective with other frameworks, like much like also in Python world, like other frameworks, like Vue separate a bit the actual, what Eric calls here, like the class, that is this HTML, into a separate file, which you use as a template, and then we render it from a normal TS or JS file. So Angular, I believe, also follows that same pattern. And it has pros and cons. So for instance, on the Vue side of things, being able to separate the template and the actual JavaScript allows for performance optimizations that they do on that side. On the other hand, here you see that on a single file where we're working on everything we need to do, and we're actually creating the actual component and how it will look. So it's pretty convenient to just be able to work on a single file. But because this is mixing like JavaScript with HTML, like the amount of optimizations that you can do on these files, it's very difficult, because basically you can just put any type of TypeScript or JavaScript in there, which cannot easily be optimized using other patterns and other frameworks. So it has advantages and disadvantages. I guess for this demo, I really like that we are on a single file, and then we can actually see everything in a single place. So that's very powerful from working with TSX files or JSX.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, I mean, I personally like a lot working in TSX, because I mix code and I mix HTML. I do understand that maybe other developer doesn't like that. They for sure have arguments not to like that, but I mean, at some point you need to make a choice and stick with it. And this is what I wanted to show here. Animated number comes from a React library, which is I just Google here trying to find a way to make the counter more animated. I just type React animated number, and and Google drove me directly to that library. And this is the one which simply where am I? So jupyterlab here. This is the one which does the rolling of the number.
Yeah. And there's nothing like that in Lumino then, right?
Well, no, not at all. I mean, if we go back to Lumino here, I'm going to put those files side by side. And this is more the TSX way, where you mix code and HTML. This is a simple HTML button, but this is the one from Material UI. Mm-hmm. But you see a clear difference here. This is some line of code. This is really something which is JSX, JavaScript with React.
Do you think in the long run, if you write things in React and or directly in Lumino, React will always produce shorter code?
Well, I don't know if it's shorter, if the code which is produced is shorter, because if I go here, I don't know, well, okay. This is a side effect of TypeScript. Because that library didn't have any types, I had to declare that so that the compiler does not complain. And if I do not put that type definition, I guess I'm going to fail at some point of compilation here. Look. So to come back to this was about TypeScript, but if you look, if the library has some types, I could go by clicking on the name. I could go to the implementation, and maybe the implementation is just completely wrong, very bad, produce a lot of code. So probably as a developer here, I write less code, but at the end, I'm not sure if the produce JavaScript by Webpack, because I don't see here the Webpack one, but at the end, this is what Webpack will bundle everything. And maybe because I introduced a bad library, the Webpack bundle would be larger than plain Lumino.
Yeah, I guess that's something that is important, is that being React being so popular, there are already a lot of components out there floating around in the web that you could use and integrate very easily, like you're doing with the Material UI one. So in terms of that, it does probably save a lot of work. Yeah. You can reuse another component from another project or library and just tweak it to fit your needs.
Yeah,
and
like
go ahead, Ani.
Oh, sorry. No, go
ahead.
Go for it.
What I was going to say with that, also one of those awesome things about having that community support seems like it would be, right? A lot of times extension writers in particular are doing it on their own because they're solving a problem that they need. And so they don't necessarily have, right, support from, for example, like from a design perspective, that they could pull in Material UI instantly sounds really useful to them, because maybe they don't have someone that they can consult if they don't know, like, if they don't know what to do for design or they don't know other stuff. So having that community seems like it could be really helpful. Does that sound true?
Yeah, I think, like, I mean, when I'm developing, for example, just having the ability to be able to shop, like Gonzalo said, for like components that like I just don't want to bother writing by myself. Because maybe I'm not focused on writing a button, but maybe I'm developing the backend and I just need a really quick thing to work for now. Mm-hmm. I can have my UX, UI design team look at, like, once like the actual thing is just working, I can have them tear it apart. I think that's just a really nice thing to have, because you're literally just copying and pasting code from the documentation of these frameworks, you know, most of the time, and then configuring them to like basically your needs, or you're just reading their really well documented APIs. Yeah. Sorry, Gonzalo, did I cut you off?
Yeah, no, this is exactly what I've tried to showcase here. If I had to implement that animated number, well, maybe it's not difficult, but still, I mean, you need to render, you need to do something because the update here is not trivial in Lumino. When you need to update the DOM, you need to call something like this update, and you need to play with the widgets and remove, add that again. So the virtual DOM, which React provides, is not built in Lumino. And I don't know how many lines of code I should have to implement that simple functionality. It's not 2 or 3. I mean, it's maybe 20, probably. I'm not sure, but 20 lines of code only for that.
Right.
If we're talking about limitations, right, we've been talking a lot about pros and cons. Are there specific ways that this impacts Jupyter? Because we've been talking overall, like, are there limitations to its use in Jupyter, right? It's not, we were talking earlier, it's not the whole thing.
Yeah, I think mixing two libraries is never easy. So the states, the properties you have to manage is not, is done in a different way in those two libraries. In terms of design, you face concerns when you show a Lumino button, which is typically blue with border, I don't know, 1. And if you look at that Lumino button and you look at the Material UI button, they are completely different. And
yeah.
it can really shock the user. So maybe you should have a team to make the Material UI look like Lumino, or maybe the reverse, because jupyterlab has also teams. So maybe you should develop a theme for jupyterlab to look like Material UI. So this is a concern. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring that up, because I wonder, I mean, one of my personal favorite frameworks is Bootstrap, which is still super popular and widely used. You know, what does it say for my design team if I have all of a sudden someone wanting to develop a app in Bootstrap, or like wants to develop something akin to like the GitHub UI, but wants to make that work, and a material design based extension work? What do you do in cases like that? I'm not sure if there's an answer. I'm not clear if there's an answer there, but just an interesting thing to think about, given that we have a lot of these kind of popular, robust frameworks built around a lot of different design guidelines. Maybe Isabella has something to say about that. Do you have any thoughts, Isabella?
How to reconcile different design systems?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, right. We're looking at it from kind of a not truly back end, but from my stance as a designer, it always feels very back end approach through all this. Yeah, there's this difficult thing of, right, like you do want the UI, right, to go together so that users feel like they're navigating the same space, so that users feel like they know that they haven't accidentally left the app, right? Like that it looks more legitimate, like I can trust this button. This isn't some strange button that has shown up, right? So that kind of consistency can be really critical. But at the same time, there's this balance of, right, at jupyterlab, as far as I know, since we started with Material UI, but I think we intentionally diverged from it some. And that makes, right, that's maintenance problems for us sometimes, because we're doing something different and we don't always have the ability to back it up as quickly as, right, how powerful Material stuff is, or Bootstrap, or whatever it may be. Figuring out how to have those live together is hard, because you have to find, you kind of have to make a decision. Are you going to follow it perfectly? Are you going to create something in the middle? And I think that's kind of what it sounded like you were talking about, Eric, like, right, like you're figuring out how to pull these pieces in, and it's super useful that this thing is here, but it doesn't really match. And now how do I do that? And now this is an extra thing for me to do, an extra work that, from my experience, most developers don't want to deal with CSS. So that's also really miserable.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that your question, Ani? I know that didn't really answer it, but yes, it's a problem I deal with.
Yeah, no, there's definitely no answer to this question. I'm just curious, from like your perspective, you're faced with a lot of, I think, design hurdles when it comes to like the I think, the options that are available to people. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you could just go a number of different ways. But one of the things that did come to mind while we were speaking of this was, Eric, did you get a chance to talk about state at all and how state is handled, React state specifically, within Lumino/JupyterLab? I think that'd be really cool to just go over, because I know that was a problem I faced until I just switched everything over to functional components.
Yeah, the state, I mean, this is something which I manage simply with some fields on the class. So this is a state here, local state. Now, if you want to share the state, well, this is something which can be achieved, like to my knowledge in Lumino, by sending some signals. And so other components can receive the signals. I don't have any here in that demo, some signals, but it's just like, hey, something happens, so I'm going to emit something. And this is the observer pattern, which allows another class to listen to those signals and receive a message and manage the state themselves. So there is no such way in Lumino to manage distributed states around multiple class. There is, well, a way to process something with a storage system, but it's not a distributed state across components. So yeah, I would say you have to manage your state locally and use signals to communicate any state change. What I would say with React is that you could use something like Redux, and it's not provided as such by Lumino, by JupyterLab, but this is something typically used by React developer. Probably you could use also Redux in Lumino, but I would say you would have to build your own actions, reducer, and so on, and it would be like also trying to mix two different libraries which are not designed probably to work together.
Awesome. Yeah, that's a great explanation. Thanks for that. I mean, I know I couldn't find really any good succinct answers to how do I manage state, because that does come to mind when we're developing the simplest applications in the web these days. And not everyone wants to use classes, so yeah, that was a really excellent explanation. But I think that was a really nice React demo in general, Eric. Thank you. That was super in depth. I know if I was coming to the ecosystem again, that would have saved me at least like 2 months worth of kind of research and reading. So that was really informative.
Yeah, thank you, Annie. Thank you.
Yeah. Gonzalo, have you written any React extensions recently?
I am actually just starting to work in this topic right now with the accessibility one. So
Right.
I started using the UI material one just to get my buttons in place as I start doing stuff. So
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I've used React Bootstrap Material UI, which is their material implementation, and both of them work super flawlessly with JupyterLab 2.0. So hopefully we'll see that continue on with 3.0. And maybe we should like share some tips and tricks in accordance with a quirkshop or something like that, because there are some really cool syntax things that I'd like to almost take from Eric and keep in my little like cheat sheet of like, hey, I forgot how to address this one little thing in Lumino. What command was it again? So, but yeah, that should be super exciting to see in the forthcoming months. Eric, is it possible to, just in our last 5 minutes here, is it possible in the 3.0 release, if I start developing an extension now, how, like a React extension, how difficult do you foresee it being to migrate from 2.0 to 3.0 if everything is basically inside a React application, but the, specific Lumino portions that I have? if I'm rendering basically just a React widget, that's my application, how difficult would it be to move, do you think?
Yeah, I expect that not to be difficult because the framework has not changed between 2 and 3. So your development should be just work as it is. What may change is all the machinery, where the one I showed you, Yarn Watch or GLPM Watch and jupyterlab Watch, which discuss together, that machinery may change. So the commands you will run in your shell to be able to develop will not be the same, but it should be, just follow the guide and it should be okay. But the development should remain untouched. It should be transparent to you.
That's awesome. Yeah, we are almost coming up on time, but kind of like Ani said, if there's anything people want to say, I know building extensions can be a headache for some people, and some of you have been learning it very recently. Any last tips you want to give, or things you wish you knew?
Well, I think the ecosystem is much better today, and probably the jupyterlab extension example repository is a first place to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I learned a lot from this discussion personally. So I think that this is probably a good place to start, to be completely honest. This and honestly, the React documentation, functional hooks or functional components hooks, weird technical things like that can all come later. I think it's just really nice to get, like Eric said, like he has that example and that cookie cutter up. Honestly, if people were to go start there, I think that'd be the best place to start. Sorry, Gonzalo, you were going to say something.
Yes, I had my mic muted, so yeah, no worries. Yeah, something that has really helped me, and it's something I keep repeating, is just diving into the code base of jupyterlab. So, for instance, the file browser is a component that uses React for several things. So it's something that at least helped me a lot to understand how I could start working with things. Just see how other things that are already using React in the jupyterlab code base work. So that's also an invaluable resource for anyone trying to figure things out.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for this. And I look forward to seeing all your extension work, right? We've got a lot of, we haven't seen it yet, particularly from Gonzalo and Ani. But this is not our last discussion of extensions, right? In this place, what's up next? What are you guys thinking about next with extensions, or what's on your plate there?
I know I'm personally working on an extension that should be ready for demo soon. So honestly, just getting that done. But I think what I'd like to demonstrate in it is a lot of things that I learned, specifically surrounding, I think, style of writing React, which is really weird. Right? Like Gonzalo went over it really briefly, but Vue and Angular and React kind of have their three kind of main methods of thinking styles. And while experiencing writing a React application for jupyterlab has kind of changed my perspective. It's not, I don't typically agree with all of the norms associated with React, just some of them. But it's worked really effectively in my use case. And also, I think I've had advice from some of the people that are kind of directly working on like even the Luminos side of things, like the React widget components. So a lot of that kind of advice had geared me to architect this application in this specific way. So I think maybe that plus like you, Isabella, could probably rip apart the design and be like, I was thinking something along the lines of that probably, unless Gonzalo had something super cool he wanted to.
Oh no, I should probably just do a demo, and
yeah,
so that I can actually put myself to work and have something to show. So yeah, I guess demos on the way probably.
Awesome. That's really exciting. And that will be in the week after next. So more demos in a week and a half. Awesome.
Yeah. I think we could cover the difference between jupyterlab 2 and 3.
Yeah.
That's the question Annie asked.
Yeah. that's a big question, right? That's been a problem in the past, supporting extensions as all these versions are changing. Yeah, that would be awesome too.
Yeah, I think it'd be really nice for people to kind of have a comfort in their have comfort in their mind when they're developing an application today, that there's some sort of future proofability with like not, you know, a significantly large amount of effort to push over. I think that would, you know, allow a lot of people to start developing today. And then when 3.0 eventually gets released, the move of their extension to the released, you know, 3.0 version will just be seamless enough, and people will just be happy. Hopefully, that's the goal.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time. That's what we have for today. But yes, thank you, Eric, for that demo. It was very descriptive, and I loved how you broke up part by part. Thank you, Gonzalo and Ani, for the feedback and answering the questions that sometimes I don't even know to ask. That was wonderful. Yeah. I look forward to our next extension.
Thanks, everyone. I'm really happy to be part of these quirkshops and share anything and everything that we have in our head at this moment. So looking forward to the next one.
Yes, thanks, everyone. Thank you, Isabella.
Thank you, Isabella.
Bye.
Welcome. Bye.
See ya.